I'll be honest. Most people read the book of Leviticus, and that's where they quit reading the Bible. Why? Because after the drama in Egypt, the plagues, baby Moses in a basket, the Red Sea splitting, Moses on the mountain, the burning bush, suddenly the story becomes rules, sacrifices, priests, blood, skin diseases, even dietary law, ritual purification. That's not because most people completely misunderstand what Leviticus actually is. Leviticus is not random religious bureaucracy. It is the operating manual for a civilization that's standing at the base of a holy God after 400 years of slavery. And that's the context. At the end of Exodus, the tabernacle is completed. God's presence descends into the center of the Israelite camp. The creator of the universe is now dwelling among them. An immediate question becomes, how do sinful, chaotic human beings survive in the presence of God? That's Leviticus. And it's more interesting when you break it down that way. Because God is not simply giving religious rules, He is rebuilding human beings from the ground up. Remember who these people were. These people had spent generations in Egypt, and Egypt in the world shaped everything. Their thinking, sexuality, worship, power structures, identity, even their understanding of morality and authority. They were physically free from Pharaoh, but mentally, they were still in Egypt. Leviticus is the transition and process of removing the old ways, the legacy ways of Egypt from their hearts and minds. So God begins building structure into every aspect of life. The sacrificial system was not primitive superstition. It was a constant reminder that sin has consequence. Blood represented life. Sacrifice represented substitution. Every offering reinforced the idea that disorder, rebellion, and corruption, that ultimately it cost something. Then comes along priesthood. Aaron and his son in the story become mediators between God and his people. Not because they were superior, but because access to holiness required structure and reverence, and certainly obedience. Then Aaron's sons attempt unauthorized worship before God. And what happens to them? Both of them, they die instantly. Modern people hate that story because it feels severe, but it's real. One reason is because it establishes the central themes of Leviticus, that God defines worship and man does not improvise it. And there's left and right limits and boundaries. And then come along clean laws and not so clean laws. Most people reduce these laws to hygiene, but they actually are a lot deeper than that. They discuss constantly in Leviticus the separate categories of life from death, order from chaos, the clean from the corrupted, the holy from the common. Anything associated with decay, blood loss, disease, deformity, or death symbolized the broken condition of humanity after sin had entered the world. Right at the center of this book sits Leviticus 16, the Day of Atonement. Again, reshaping this is to develop an understanding of structure. Once a year, the high priest enters the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place in Israel. One single goat is sacrificed, another, the scapegoat, symbolically carries the sin of people into the wilderness. This becomes the spiritual reset for the nation. That's what scapegoat means. The deeper you study Leviticus, the more you realize this book is about containing chaos or structuring formalities. Because Leviticus governs worship, leadership, diet, sexuality. It is like a field manual for the day. They cover justice, sanitation, agriculture, family structure, and national identity. Why? What's the point? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with freedom without structure can destroy a civilization. It's what's happening in our own country where we're losing structure and it's destroying our civilization. And I think that's the lesson that modern culture often misses. The Israelites had been liberated physically in Exodus. Physically, Leviticus was about teaching them how to not become slaves again spiritually and mentally, morally and culturally, because it was easy to do after 400 years of slavery. Ultimately, that's why the book still matters, not because Christians are called to replicate ancient temple sacrifices. I mean, that's part of it. That's part of the book. But because the principles underneath those sacrifices remain timeless. Like discipline does matter. Holiness matters. Order in chaos matters. And often civilizations collapse when corruption becomes normalized. So yeah, Leviticus for sure is technical, but it's not boring. It is God teaching former slaves how to become a nation without becoming Egypt all over again. Are we becoming Egypt? It's a good question. Yeah, I have a breakdown of this. I'm going to break it down in my next episode chronologically and historically. I wanted to keep this episode short to give you a 30,000-foot perspective of Leviticus because it is mundane and it's a hard book to read and get through. I'll try to make it as tolerable as possible, but I wanted to teach you the technicality of why it's important to understand Leviticus. Exodus was exciting. It was the great exit out of Egypt. In the framework of your religious journey yourself, it is foundationally important. Appreciate you guys. I hope you're practicing what you preach. Till next time. Peace.